The help of Hashem, we are learning Taanis Daf Chav Dalid. We left off on Daf Chav Gimel Amid Beis, 6 lines from the bottom of the Amid. As we mentioned, we're going to be learning about the importance as a rule of not davening for nature to change. We're going to have amazing stories of Rabbi Yossi of Yukras. We're going to have other stories of the greatness of Elazar Ish Birta, who was a tremendous Baal Tzedakah. We're going to have many stories regarding what happened when there was a lack of rain and fasts were decreed, and how those fasts ultimately brought about the rain. We're going to have another story of Ufa. We're going to have the theme that there are times that the tzaddik's humility will bring about the rain, and certain great mitzvahs, certain tanoim, certain amorim that had other tremendous chusim was that which brought about the rain. We're going to have the concept that whenever possible, it's better never to derive benefit from a miracle. Actually, we're going to have a story how once Shadim, demons, attempted to kill Rava because Rava prayed and he succeeded in bringing about rain in the summer. But we're going to have stories that are going to share the common theme that when a fast was decreed because of the lack of rain, at times Hashem did not respond to the fast day initially, but only because of, at a later point, again, whether it was because of a certain amount of anivus, humility experienced by the leader of the generation, or because of other certain mitzvahs that came about later, that is what brought about Hashem's responding to our fasting, to our calling out, and the rain came. And if we'll have time on Daf Chav Daled on the base, we will at least start with the great stories of the Tana, Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa, and much more. What a daf it is. So here we go, Chav Gimel Amid Beis, 6 lines from the bottom of the Amid, Vesu, when we just finished learning in the Gemara statement, a little bit above, on Chav Gimel Amid Beis, that look at the difference between Takifei Da'aradi Yisrael versus Chasidim of Bavel. And we mentioned who is an example of the strong ones. And as we mentioned, strong in the sense that they hid their greatness. There were tzaddikim the stadim, and we spoke about Rabbi Yoina, the father of Rabbi Mani. So now we're going to learn more about this Rabbi Mani, the Su, that this Rabbi Mani, the son, right, of Rabbi Yoina, Hava Shechiach Kamei Rabbi Yitzchak ben Eliyashav. He was a Talmud. He was a chassid of Rabbi Yitzchak ben Eliyashav, and Amar Lei, there was a time that as a chassid, he asked his teacher of money, asked Rabbi Yitzchak, that he married into a wealthy family. And there are times that wealth makes a person feel arrogant. And at that time, he perceived that there was a certain amount of arrogance that was aimed at him from the household of his wife's family. So Rabbi Yitzchak ben Eliyashav, responding to his expression of, I can't take it, I can't take the family of my in-laws, Li'anu, let them become poor. He davened for them to become poor with the knowledge that poor people become humble, and once they are more humble, they're going to be less prone, let's say, to criticize their son-in-law or to criticize Rav Mani. And indeed, Rabbi Yitzchak's power of prayer was such that they became poor. V'iyanu, Amalei, there was a new problem that came about. Now that they became poor, they constantly needed Rav Mani's financial support. So before they were harassing him for whatever, now they are telling him that they need help. So he came back to his teacher and he tells Rabbi Yitzchak Amar that now they're telling me that I have to support them. In other words, the solution that you gave took away problem number 1, but it brought about a new problem number 2. So Amar, therefore, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Eliyashav responds, indeed, li'atru, let them become wealthy as they were, vi'atru. And that's a great story where you see that things were good. You think things are not the way they should be. So you daven for them to change, only to realize that it was better the way it was. Another story between Rav Mani and his teacher and his Rebbe, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Eliyashav, that Amar lo mekabli olai inchi beisi. A story of a miracle. So Rav Mani told his Rebbe that his wife doesn't look attractive to him. So Amalei asked Rabbi Yitzchak ben Eliyashav to his Talmud Rav Mani, Mashuma, what's her name? So he responded, Chana. My wife's name is Chana. So here Rabbi Yitzchak Davin, the teacher, the Rebbe Davin, that Tesiapi Chana, let Chana become beautiful. And again, and a miracle happened. Hashem responds to the tefillah of Rabbi Yitzchak, Vinis Yapas. Now, what happens is when a person becomes beautiful, sometimes they become vain, they become haughty. So that was something that he never had before from his wife. So he came back to his Rebbe saying, Amar Lei, well, your tefillah worked. My wife became beautiful. But now I got a new problem. That komenagdera alai, right? She's becoming haughty over me. So Amar Lei, so therefore Rabbi Yitzchak ben Eliyashiv again, daven that things should go back to the way they were. Ihachi tachzor chana l'shachar arusa. Let her darkness, let her unattractiveness go back to her. And v'chazor chana l'shachar rurisa. In andere Wörter, Hashem knows what He's doing. Of course, when there's a lack of rain, you got to daven for the lack of rain. But here we have amazing stories where tzaddikim responded to the tefillah. Hashem responded to the tefillah of the tzaddik. It took away one problem to bring a new problem. And the greatness of Rabbi Yitzchak is that Hashem responded to his second prayer and things came back to the way they were. Says the Gemara Vayter, concerning the same great Rabbi Yitzchak ben Eliyashiv, right towards the end of the Amid, that Hanu Trei Talmidei da Havu Kamed Rabbi Yitzchak ben Eliyashiv and Amar Lei, these two Talmidim asked of their Rebbe, Niboye Marachmi Alam Din Nichakim Tuva, we want to have greater amount of Chachma. They daven like for some unnatural thing to happen to them, that they should become more wise. So Amar Lahu, to which Rabbi Yitzchak ben Eliyashiv respond that Imi Hoysa Ushalachtiyon, the way Rashi learns 4 lines from the bottom, that I used to have the power to ask of Hashem to do something, and Hashem would give me exactly what I asked of Him. But it says Rashi Va'achshav. Now the last line in Rashi Chav Gimel Amud Beis, Ain't Filosi Mikubelas Kolkach. He told his Talmud, or these two Talmidim, I don't have that level of koyach of tefillah, and the way people understand Pshat and Rashi is that he just brushed them away. His power of prayer did not change, but because of the 2 prior stories where he realized that he asked for something to change, and Hashem listened to him, but the change brought about a problem that was even bigger than the first problem. Really, that's the Pshat in the first 2 stories. So he realized that if Hashem did not give them that level of chachma, it's meant to be that way. And again, that's the general rule. Do not pray for something to change from the way it is. And now, let's move on to a story of Rabbi Yossi ben Yukras. Says the Gemara. Last line, right? Chav Gimel Amud Beis, last line in the Amid. It's unbelievable stories. Rabbi Yossi bar Ovin, he used to be the student of Rabbi Yossi the ben Yukras. And something happened, as we'll see soon, and the Talmud Rabbi Yossi bar Ovin was afraid to continue to be this Talmud of Rabbi Yossi the ben Yukras, so Shafke ba'asa l'kamid Ravashi, which is quite amazing. Ravashi was the one who compiled the Gemara, so he went right down. Let's go to the top of the daf Chav Daled. So he changed his teacher. Now he's sitting. He's a new Talmud. Ravashi doesn't yet know who he is. So Yemachad one day, Shomei the Kogaris. He hears Ravashi teaching. This is Rabbi Yossi bar Ovin, that Amar Shmuel, he quotes Shmuel that says, if a person takes a fish out of the sea, if a part of the fish outside the sea becomes dry and hard, like a sela, and like Rashi writes 2 lines from the top of the Amid. In other words, even when even after a part of the fish became hard and became dried out in the size of a sela, the fish is still moving. The person who caught the fish on Shabbos took the fish and he threw it back into the water. So you would think, he threw the fish back into the water when the fish was still moving. He did not violate, right, the av malacha of, Rashi says, of netilas l'shama. So Ravashi is quoting Shmuel by saying it's not true. That since the size of a sela became dry, that means that fish will die, and the person who removed the fish from the sea was chayiv because of netilas sheshama, with all the dinim. Let's go. Normally we speak about not that person was machal Shabbos b'mezid, but he's chayiv chatos because he did it b'shoigig. So is the din that Ravashi Davchov Dalet 3 lines from the top of the Amud. So Amar Lei, so now this new Talmud, and again Ravashi doesn't even know his name yet, tells the teacher, Rav Ashi, whoa, you're missing a detail. The lema mar ubein sanpira. It's not a across the board rule. Hold on. That's only true if the area that became dried out was only in between the fins. If there was another dried out area in the fish, it doesn't necessarily mean that the fish was going to die. And if you threw it back into the water when the fish was still being mefarkes, when it was still moving or thrashing about, then you're not going to bring a chatas. Now, Rav Ashi agreed with that. But Rav Ashi was disappointed with this new Talmud, because Rav Ashi knew that this is a halacha that was said by Rabbi Yossi bar Ovin, which was him. Just Rav Ashi didn't know it was him. And it's important to say something b'shem oimrei. So Amalei, v'lishavar lo mar da'ehi Rabbi Yossi ben Ovin amara. In other words, Eves. But why didn't you have the b'shem oimrei? Gavaldik, what an intro. So Amalei, so Rabbi Yossi tells Rav Ashi, no, that's me. I don't have to say it b'shem oimrei because I'm Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Ovin. Amar Lei, Rav Ashi says, so what are you doing here? I knew that you're the Talmud of Rabbi Yossi ben Yukras. The Lav Kamed Rabbi Yossi ben Yukras, have a Shechiach Mar. So Rabbi Yossi responds, Amar Lei, yes, I used to be by Rabbi Yossi ben Yukras. Amar Lei asks Rav Ashi, my Kama Shafka Mar, why did you leave your old Rebbe? That's question number one. Now, Rav Ashi asked question number two, and why did you come here? The second question he didn't need to answer. Because Rav Ashi asked that question because of Rav Ashi's humility. It goes without saying that if you have a reason to leave Rabbi Yossi ben Yukras, the best option is Rav Ashi. But he needed to explain why he left his original Rebbe. So Amalei, to which Rabbi Yossi ben Ovin responds that, and here's saying very sharp words, that Gavra, a man, referring to his old Rebbe, the Alberei Alberate Loichos is Aldidi Echachayis. He had no mercy, not on the son, not on his daughter. Certain tzaddikim, again, they're very makbid. Tzaddikim doimim loboidim. We keep on learning the concept that usevivav nis'ara ma'oid, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu medagdekim tzaddikim kechut ha'sa'ara. So you have the concept that certain tzaddikim, they were so precise. He says if two stories we're going to learn happened in which my Rebbe didn't have rachmanos on his children, I'm afraid to be a student. Something might happen and he will not have rachmanos of me. I want to live. Therefore, I came to you. Now, therefore, I came to you. He didn't have to explain. Now, both stories. These are very difficult stories to understand. But let's go learn the Gemara. We're learning Torah and Hashem will enlighten us. What's the story concerning the son of Rabbi Yossi ben Yukras? Rabbi Yossi ben Yukras, he hired workers to work for him in his fields out there of the city, out there. Evening came, and their employer, Rabbi Yossi ben Yukras, did not yet bring them food. We have these sugyas in Bava Metzia that when the common practice is that part of the salary is giving them a meal at the end of the day, even if it wasn't verbalized, when you hired your day laborers, you're mechuyev to do so. And that's a very important thing. When you owe someone food and they're hungry and there was a delay, the Rabbi Yossi ben Yukras did not bring them food. Happened to be that a son was there. So Amrulei, the workers told the son of their master that here's a chaim kefila, we're hungry. And he felt like he's responsible for his father. He was a good son. So they were sitting pumped under a fig tree. Now they were sitting at a time where there was no fruits. It wasn't the season of fruits. And the son needed to give the workers fruits to protect his father. His father shouldn't do something wrong. Look at the tzaddik of the son. So the son davened and he called out, a mess outside the season. And why? Why should you do so? Not for me, for my father. In order for them to have food. And the te'ena responded. And there was miraculous figs and they ate. And so all of a sudden, while they're eating the figs, comes along Rabbi Yossi ben Yukras, and he tells he didn't see it that they're eating, but he also knew that he needed to be there with food. He came rushing back, and he tells them that don't think that I, God forbid, did not fulfill my part of the deal. I was going to bring you food on time. nogahana, the reason why it got dark, in other words, it got dark, I'm only coming after it's dark, I delayed, was only because there was some mitzvah that I was involved in, and I was unable to come up until now. And there was a halachically justifiable reason. So he felt guilty. He came with a teretz. He came with an excuse. So Amrullah, the worker says, no, don't worry. We're good. Rachmana lizba'ach. They were so good that they blessed their master, the opposite of being disappointed. They said, may the merciful one satisfy you as your son satisfied us. May Hashem even make miracles for you. So Amar Luhu, my son, how did my son have money to give you food? Mehecha. So they told him, Hachi v'hachi have a ma'aseh, that your son spoke out to the te'era tree. So Amar Loi says, Rabbi Yossi ben Yukras, Oy Gewalt, Bini, my son, Ato hitrachto es koincha. You, so to say, troubled your master, your creator, right? Ato koinech, ato boirech, koina hakol, another lashon of the creator. You troubled the creator, therefore, ye asev gewalt. Made that person, meaning his son, may he pass away prior to his time. And indeed, he passed away. That was one story. In where, again, Rabbi Yossi, but Rabbi Avin saw that my Rebbe is a big has a lot of hakpadas on his own son. Berati Mahi, what was the story with the daughter? Says the Gemara that Havyale Berata Balas Yofi. He had a daughter, Rabbi Yossi ben Yukras. That was beautiful. There was a time that the father saw that there was a person to have a kariya bochutza, that he was making a hole in the fence, in order for him to gaze at the beauty of his daughter. And he confronted this what's it called, a peeper, whatever the lashon is in English. Amalei, my eye, what are you doing? So to which this person responded, Amalei, Rebbe, if I cannot marry such a beautiful woman, at least let me look at her. So Amallah, to which Rabbi Yossi said to his daughter, Biti, that your existence, your beauty is bringing anguish to the people. And therefore, shubi la'afarech, oigevalt. And it's better for you to return to your dust, shot for you to pass away, instead of you being the cause for people. In other words, it wasn't her fault, but on his level, he davened for his daughter to return to her dust, whether it means, like we began in today's shir, for her to lose her beauty, whether it means, God forbid, kipshutai, but there was a certain, from the perspective of his Talmud, lack of rachmanis, and he was afraid to be his Talmud.
I'm sorry. And he's a tzaddik? I mean, it seems like this doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry.
In these stories, you got to be careful. You got to be careful. Rabbi Yossi ben Yukras is looking at us, learning about him. Look at what he did to his son and daughter.
Right, I'm scared.
I understand.
Rabbi, but what about the Eberster listening to the son of Rabbi Yossi and listening to the prayers of Rabbi Yossi himself? I mean, do you see where my question goes? Like,
yeah, he is asking that there is an inherent contradiction. That if you're not supposed to change nature, if there's a shaloi bismano, so what about? So why did God listen to the prayer of his son? And furthermore, let me word it that way. Let me word it this way. That maybe, and that will answer Kavan's question. Everything that I'm saying now is just a havamina. That maybe the son did something wrong. And the only reason why the son was not passing away is because the rule that things should not happen prior to their time, that was protecting the son. So the father told the son, oh my God, now that you daven for Hashem not to follow his preordained times, now you're in trouble. Because now maybe the other reason for which you have to pass away, you won't be protected simply by the fact that it's not yet your Zman. Maybe. But you're making a good point. Okay. So, another thing, Kevin, just with the daughter, we're not saying that this guy is off the hook. Chas v'shalom. We're not blaming the victim. What we do have throughout is that everyone has their part. Now, what was her fault? Maybe again, we began learning the story of Rabbi Yitzchak ben Rabbi Eliyashiv. Maybe it wasn't that she passed away. Maybe that he found that it would be advantageous for her not to be so beautiful. I don't know. Let's go by it. Now let's go. I'll tell you more. The hemshech. This I feel more confident that the reason why we're going to say the next story of Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Yukras is because Rav Ashi and Avina knew that we're going to learn this Gemara and we're going to have a question mark on the greatness of Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Yukras. We don't understand everything. Not understanding a tzaddik means that we don't understand. Here, there's another story about his greatness. That again, when it comes to tzaddikim, we speak about their donkeys. And that people would rent their donkey. You know how they paid him? That at the end of the day, people would pay the fee that they made up with Rabbi Yossi ben Yukras. They would put the money on the back of the donkey, and the donkey would walk home to the master. But that was the greatness. If the person who used the donkey overpaid by mistake or underpaid, imagine, the donkey would not budge. How great is that? And Yom Echad, Inshu Zuga the Sandala Allah. Inshu means vergessen, that someone left their personal item, their sandals, on the back of the donkey with the right amount of money for the rental, but they also had the sandals, and the donkey didn't move. Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Yukras would not own anything that's not his. Even if someone else made a mistake, not only was that his midah, but he was such a great tzaddik that his belongings, his chamoir, even his animal didn't want it. A tzaddik gomer. And only then, v'hadar asla. And he put it in here, not to explain the above stories, but for no one to look away. We don't understand. Kevan, it's normal that we don't understand the tzaddik. The tzaddikim doimim lo boidem. How much do we understand of God? Very little. But when we don't understand the ways of God, it only shows that we lack understanding. That's all it does. It doesn't show anything chas v'sholem on the ways of God that are perfect. Now let's go from mitzadik letzadik. Now our girsa here is Elazar ish birta. There's another girsa here, Elazar ish bartusa. But we're going to read what our Gemara writes. Elazar ish birta. Whenever a tzedakah collector would see Elazar ben Birta, the tzedakah collector would run away. Look at these stories. The tzedakah collector didn't want for Elazar to see him. Why? Because the whole whenever Elazar saw the tzedakah collector, he would give him everything that was in his pocket. Can you imagine? Now, we learned in Ksubas Dafnun that they made a takana in Nusha that Aliyah Bazbeis Yoiser Machaimish, that there was a limit to how much tzedakah you should give. So first of all, this happened prior to the takana in Nusha. Second of all, we Hasidim know, and that was like a big chiddush of the Alter Rebbe. Could be he intuited that chiddush, that if you're giving tzedakah, not only for the mitzvah of tzedakah, but when tzedakah has in it a tshuva component, then there is no limit to tzedakah. I know there is a story with our Rabbi Koren Zayda, Rabbi Koren Sr. of California. His grandfather bought 770, and he would give mishunadik amounts of money to tzedakah, to the point that his wife told the Rebbe that it's impossible. He was very wealthy. He gave everything away. So the Rebbe told his wife that what can I do that he is chesed of atzilus. In other words, you have throughout history certain yidden that the amount of tzedakah was not normal. There was no limits. That was Elazar ish bartois. So the tzedakah collector had rachmanas on him. He hid from him. And listen to these stories again. Again, these stories again are also difficult. We're going to see, let's go read. One day, Elazar was going to the market. Why? His daughter was getting married. He was doing his father's duty, the parental duty of providing for his daughter's wedding. And there was someone collecting money. And they knew not that Elazar should not see them. So he attempted to hide from Tashumine, but it didn't work. Elazar saw him. And Elazar went running after him. And then when he chapped him, he told him that Ashbiasichu, I adjure you, you have to tell me the my askisu. What are you collecting for? So he had no option. So he told him that he's collecting money to marry you off. The Hassan is a Yasam and the girl is a Yisayma. Now Elazar here did not give him all the money in his pocket. Elazar, here he has to marry off a daughter. That's the way I understand. So he asked the Gabe Tzedakah how much money is missing for their wedding. And he gave him the true number. Elazar Ish Bartusa gave him all of the money that they needed, but he still had one coin left. So here he kept a coin. He only gave what was needed. So Amar Lohem Ho Avoidam, he took an oath. That's one of the lashonos of an oath is by temple service. Shehein Koidmim Lebiti. He felt that halachically he, Elazar, has to give money for them prior to his daughter, but he only gave them what they needed, which was 99% of the money in his pocket. Shakal Kol Tahava Bahadei, but Eviyavlahu. But here's the key. But Pashli Chadzuzah. It's normally he would give everything in his pocket. Here he's going to buy the dowry for his daughter. He kept whatever he was allowed to keep. He only kept one coin. So what did he do? He knew that going home with the coin in his pocket is not a good idea. He's going to buy something for his daughter's wedding. What did he do? He bought chitei. He bought wheat. But va'asik shadya ba'achlava. He brought it and he threw it into his grain storage room. And what did he do? The Gemara doesn't say. Instead of going home, he probably felt strategically it's better to go to the base Midrash. His wife is going to ask him, what did you buy? He probably bought, a tenth of a pound of wheat, of kernels. The kid said, Osoi devisu. The wife came home. She doesn't see the husband at home. So the husband is learning. But the wife found the daughter, the kala. So the mother says, the wife tells the daughter, my avuch, what did father buy for your wedding? So she says, I don't know. I do know that whatever he bought, he put into the storage room. Kol mada I say, whatever it is that he brought is ba'achlava shedise. Okay, so now the mother and the daughter, they were curious to find out, what did he buy? So Asya lemiftach bavada, they went to open up the door. Let's say it was a barn or whatever it was. It was a place where you store grain. And Chazas, even before they opened up the door, they noticed that achlava, the molyuchite, that it's so filled with wheat, that the kanafki b'tzinoira the dasha, that the wheat, the kernels were going out of the frame of the door. Not only that, when they wanted to open the doors didn't open out, the doors opened in. You couldn't open it. The door couldn't open because it was that packed with chita. Wow, Dad really overdid it. He bought so much wealth for the wedding. So with Simcha, finally he spent something on the family. She went running, the daughter went running to the Beis Medrash, and she tells her father, the daughter understood that the father never would buy that amount of food for her. The daughter right away knew that this is a nes. So she went to the father and she says to her father, Boyurei, that's Tachazi, Ma asa locha oyhavcha. Look at what the one who loves you, which is God, who loves you, look at what he did for you. And she told him that the barn is filled with grain, it's busting out of the seams. So Amalot, to which he responded, no. Ho avoida, second oath. By the avoid of the Beis Hamikdash, harein, hein, hegdish, olayich. Hegdish doesn't mean hegdish. There was no Beis Hamikdash. No one would make a hegdish. It means it's tzedakah. You cannot benefit. We are taka aniyah. We have nothing. Now, an ani is allowed to take whatever they need from the tzedakah fund. But there was so much more than what you need for your wedding. We may not take, as we'll see in today's daf, the concept of at least ideally not to benefit from Ma'aseh Nisim. Let's go on. Says the Gemara Rabbi Yehuda Nisiyah. We already mentioned he was the grandson of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, right? So his father was Gamliel, the son of Rabbi Yehuda. So there was a time that Rabbi Yehuda Nisiyah, Gazar Tanisa, our sugya generally is because there's a lack of rain. Could be there was another reason why. No, we see it's because there was a lack of rain. And Boy Rachme, and they fasted, and they davened, and yet V'lo Omar, however, after he saw how Hashem did not respond to his prayers, so called out Rabbi Yehuda Nisiyah, look, Kamo Ika Mishmol Haramasi. Look at the difference between Shmol Haramasi. Rashi writes 24 lines from the top of the Amid, and we'll see this today on Amid Beis, that there was a time that there was a drought, and Shmuel, the prophet that lived from Ramah, he davened and he cried out and he made a fast day, and it rained in the summer. That when he cried out completely out of season, Hashem responded. And look at the difference between him and Yehuda ben Gamliel. That I'm crying out during the time that it is the season and Hashem doesn't answer. And he says, Oy ladoy shekain niskan. Woe is it to the generation that they had a peg stuck into them, and that they were never given me as their leader. Oy lemisha also the yadavkach. He felt bad for the bnei of his generation. And cholash data, he became very humbled. And you know what? V'asa mitra. And that will be the theme of today's daf, that even when Hashem doesn't respond initially, when we upgrade in his level, the great Rabbi Yehuda Nisyo became even more anav, Hashem responded and the miracle happened. Noch a story. Says the Gemara, right, late nishbar v'nitka, elikim loisivza tehillah. The Benisiya goes at Tanisa, the Beis Din of the Nasi's house, doesn't say which one. Once declared a fast day, again, lack of rain. However, in our story, and so what? We learned above and Daf Yud Beis that ideally, when a fast day is going to be accepted, it should be accepted. There should be a Kabbalah by Mincha, Machloikes, the Shas Mincha, Tefillas Mincha, the day prior. Since Rabbi Yechanan and Reish Lakish didn't know about that takana, so they only found out about it in the morning. They found out before Alois HaShachar, but they were not makabel the times. So l'tzafro idinu. So Amei lei Reish Lakish le Rabbi Yechanan. Are we b'chlal included in the fast day? Holei kabilalon meurta, because we didn't know about it. So maybe we shouldn't fast, or maybe our fast won't have any meaning. So Amalei, to which Rabbi Yechanan responded to Reish Lakish, no, that Anan basrayu girorinon. That's a very important Rashi. Rashi says that whenever there is a fast declared by the Beis Din of the Nasi, it's as if, I'm reading inside Rashi, ukemi shekibalnu aleinu. It's as if we were Merkabel Taanis. We're mechoyev to fast, and the fast will count. Another story. The Benisiya, the Beis Din, or of the Nasi goes at Taanis, and rain didn't come. So what happened was that Tanaluhu Oishaya Zeira, Oishaya, who was the Zeira, the Min Chavraya, he quoted a Braisa to whoever the Nasi was, Vashteit in the Braisa, based on a pasuk in Parsha Shalach. There it's about if the Beis Din makes a mistake and they give an erroneous ruling, and people follow the ruling, how the obligation of the Chatas goes on the Sanhedrin. So the pasuk says that in other words, the error wasn't on the person, but the Beis Din gave a erroneous psak din, and the Braisa is pointing out that we are calling the leaders of the congregation the eyes, the einei ha'eda. Why does the Torah compare the leaders to eyes? So says the Braisa, mashal lekala, that when the kala is still living in her father's home, and there's a certain amount of physical blemish that a Hassan later can say that had he known, he wouldn't have married her. So is there a need to examine her? So the Braisa says like this, that calls man she'inel yafis, if a young woman's eyes are yafis, ein kol gufa tzricha b'dika, then you know that the rest of the body is healthy and proper as well. Only when a male terutais, if her eyes are weak, then if there is a need, then be boidik her body. In other words, that even if the people are unworthy, if the eyes, if the einei ha'eda, if they're tzaddikim, that's basically what the Braisa is trying to say. That's what Zeira is telling to the Nasi. Then God would listen to your prayers, even if the people are unworthy. You know why God is not answering the prayers? Because you, the leaders, you're not worthy. These are very sharfe verten. Now the Braisa says it. But Zeira, who was not the youngest ones, he quoted the Braisa. So now the Nasi reacted. See, it's beautiful how the Gemara is hiding the name of the Nasi. Whoever the Nasi then was, at least the Hasidim, they were going to give it to him. So also the Avodim of the Nasi came, they threw this kerchief around his neck. If you remember a few days ago, I spoke about the kerchiefs of great tzaddikim. They took the kerchief and they put it around his neck. Amar lei b'nei Masei, or Amar lahu b'nei Masei. So the people of the city who knew Zeira told the Avadim of the Nasi, Shafke, don't do that. Don't think that he only spoke something not so respectful to you. He harasses us as well. He's a very sharp person, Zeira. However, even the chazina, but we know that the whole nile l'shum shomayim, that Zeira means well. He's a tzaddik. Therefore, loy amri lei midi. We never react the way you are trying to react, even when he's very sharp with us. We let him be when he harasses us. So atanami shafkuhu. And how true is that? In other words, the truth hurts. The truth hurts. Elama, if the truth is if the messenger is not an emesdika person, even though they're saying the truth, you feel in your heart, who are you to say that to me? But Zeira was a chassid. So therefore, accept his criticism. And don't forget, it's a braisa, it's emes. Right. Says the Gemara Rebbe, that's already the Zayda of Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya. He gozer Tanisa. And yet, v'lo yosem mitra. Here we come back to Ilfa. Nach is kamei Ilfa. Nach is going down is always the Lashon use who the Shliach Tzibur of the fasting went. The Amri lay that the who went down wasn't Ilfa, but it was Rebbe Ilfa. Whether it's the same person, question whether you give him a title, maybe it's another Ilfa. And Amar, when he davened by verbatim, when he said the words Mashav Ruach, imagine, V'nashiv Zeka. The wind began to blow. When he said the words Moedet Hageshem, V'asa Mitra. So Rebbe saw that Hashem is responding to the tefillos of Ilfa more than to his. So Amar Lei, Rebbe asked him, My Uvdach. In other words, what mitzvah do you have? Amar Lei, that Doyerno Chika. I live in a very poor neighborhood. I live amongst people that are dochut, that have no parnas. How poor are they? They cannot afford to buy wine for Kiddush and Havdalah. My mitzvah, I have one mitzvah. That torachna va'oseina chamra l'Kiddush and Havdalah. I make sure that I provide for my chevra, for my oilam, for my community, wine for Kiddush and Havdalah. And evidently they also didn't know how to say it. He would buy the wine, and I would discharge their obligation, or they discharge their obligation. So imagine, because of that schus, one mitzvah, you never know, of providing Kiddush and Havdalah for people to make it on Shabbos, for this, God listened to Ilfa more than he listened to Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Amazing. Another story. Rav Ikvalahu Asra. Rav came to a certain place. He brought him down there because there was no rain. So again, he was the head, Rav. So Gazar Tanisa, he enacted a Taanis tzibur, and it didn't yet work. However, when the certain shliach tzibur went down to Navin, and Rav is there. So what happened was, when he said the words Mashav Ruach, V'nashav Zeka, when he said the words Moedet Hageshem, V'asa Mitra, so Amar Lei, so Rav asked him, My Uvdach, what mitzvah do you have? So he told him two things. Number one, Mikre Dardekano, I am a teacher of small children. I teach in Cheder. And what's the word? There was no schools. There was teachers. Tuition was paid directly to the teacher. He made sure never to disallow a child who cannot pay him tuition. I teach the same to poor than as I do to the rich. In other words, whoever cannot pay me, I don't take anything from them. So first of all, I taught for free if need be. Number two, even more. They easily paid the Chavre. He, for a parnasa, says the Rabbeinu Chanano, from teaching, he made very little money. But people told him they can't afford. So he had fish ponds. He sold fish. He used his material of business to give it to the children, to get them interested to learn, even though the parents didn't even pay for tuition. Cholman the Pasha, when a child was a Pesheya, the child is, child is on Shpilkis, HDAD. So what he did is Mishachadina Leminayu. That's a very advanced way of teaching. Instead of beating the child, he would bribe him by giving him fish. And he organized things for him. And he would appease the child. In other words, he was a big Baal Chesed to the child. Until the child developed a desire to learn. But the chiddush is that he went ahead and he gave from his parnasa, he gave it to the Bnei Aniyim. It's not only that he didn't charge. That's why God listened to his prayers.
Rav Afi we're talking about?
Rav. It doesn't say who the Shliach Tzibur was. Weiter. Rav Nachman Gazar Tanisa. Bayirachmi v'lo yosem mitra. So what happened was, Omar, Rav Nachman declared to God that Shaklua and Nachman, take Nachman, Chavoitim in Gudala Ara, throw him down from the top all the way to the bottom. In other words, I am unworthy of the position. They made him into the Rav of the community. How am I worthy, God? If you're not listening to my prayers, I'm unworthy. Demote me. And he felt very humbled, like we had in the beginning today. It was now the new anivus that brought about the rain. So because of the cholish daite, v'asra mitra, leiv nishbar v'nitka elikim loisivzem. Another story. Rabbi Gazar Tanisa and Vayrachma v'loyosem mitra amru lei. So now they told Rabbi, that was very helpful. Yeah, I don't understand. God is not answering to you, but the Rav Yehuda, whenever he would fast, that rain should come. The rain, right? The rains would come right away. In other words, they began to compare it to Rav Yehuda. So Amar Lohu, so Rabbi told the Chevra, my Avid, let me analyze, let me explain to you something. Lest you think that the reason why God responds to Rav Yehuda, not to me, is because Rav Yehuda has more Torah. That's not the case. Anan, if it's because of the amount of Torah studying, so you should know that Anan, Adifa Minayu, that we, Rabbi says, we have more Torah than Rav Yehuda. And how do I know that? The Mishnah, Rav Yehuda, during the time of Rav Yehuda, called Tenuye, everything that they learned, Chavdaf, Chavdalud Amid Beis, on top of the Amid, this is very important. What was their primary learning? Only in the Seder of Nezikim. Look inside the top Rashi. Rashi is also on the side of Tosfos on the right. That the Nezikim have a lemudam lo yehoya gadol ela b'Seder Nezikim. It's not that they only learn Seder Nezikim, but today in many yeshivas, what do we learn? Nashim Nezikim. Their main learning was Nezikim. And they were not that knowledgeable in everything else as much as. However, says Rabba Ba'anan, Kol Masnina Meshita Sidara. We learn today all of the 6 Sidara. Furthermore, V'chiyava Mati Rav Yehuda in the tractate called Uksin. Now, Uksin, it means stems. Here we're speaking about Bekitzer Tumas Oicholin. If something is not food, it's not susceptible to Tuma. If you have the stem of food that's inedible, but since it serves as the stem of that product, and furthermore, there's also a concept called Yad, and there's a lot to do with Arashi here, but the Bekitzer, the Yad means if something is used to grab the food proper, and you have that even by vegetables, that the outer vegetable leaves, like by the lettuce, when you grab the entire vegetable, you grab it by the outer leaves. Even the din will be that even if the outer leaf per se is ruined and it's inedible, since it serves as a handle for the food, number one, it's susceptible to becoming tummy. Number two, it becomes a conduit. In other words, if I touch food A, and then food A is touching food B, so then even when Tuma goes from one to the other, it always goes down a notch. But something that's a handle for something else becomes part of the something else. That's the general concept. So the Mishnah writes that if a woman is preserving a vegetable in a pot and the act of preservation was removing its moisture, so now the outer leaf of the vegetable is completely dried out. Therefore, it's no longer considered the handle, because when something is very dry, it's weak. If you grab it only by that outer leaf, it could be the outer leaf will break off. Or there's another version that the Mishnah spoke about something similar, that if you have zaysim, if you have olives, that someone is pressing, shekavasham bitarpehem, that they were being pressed or they're being preserved together again with their leaf. Now some source of tuma touched the leaf. Here also, since the leaf became pressed, so it became weakened, it's not properly connected to the olive. If you were to only hold on to the leaf, it wouldn't necessarily take along with it the olive. So the leaf, the yad, doesn't have a status of food, not the handle becomes tummy, not the olive becomes tummy. That is more or less the Mishnah, and there are many challenges with the details. And so when Rabbi Yehuda was learning it, he said, Havayis the Rav B'Shmuel Koch Hazina Hacha. It's a very important statement. We understand that the archetype of Talmudic analysis of a Mishnah, who perfected that Chachma, was Rav and Shmuel. Havayis the Rav and Shmuel. So Rav Yehuda says, Oy Gaval, this Mishnah is very difficult. I need to have the amazing koyach of analysis of Rav and Shmuel to properly understand this Mishnah. No, he had a difficult time understanding that Mishnah in Uksin. Rabbi says, I have 13 different pshatim in that Mishnah. Va'anan komasnin bo'utzim t'leisan misifta. There are different ways of typing the words t'leisan misifta, but one is that he knew that it's very difficult. He needed to use the analytical skills of Rav and Shmuel to properly chop it. I can already give you 13 different pshatim. In other words, Torah scholarship, we have more than Rav Yehuda. But the Rabbah is admitting, Rabbah is saying, however, Hashem listened to Rav Yehuda a lot more than to us. Rav Yehuda, if he only removed one of his shoes, if you remember above, that on the greater fast days, on the 7 greater fast days, right, the concept of not only not eating and drinking, but you also have to take upon yourself all of the inuyim that we had in Yuma, including taking off your leather shoes. When Rabbi Yehuda would only remove one of his shoes, Hashem already responded to him. Asamitra. Now, Rabbi Yehuda removing a shoe doesn't only mean that he was Makabel Taanis, but we also have the concept never to remove yourself from the tzibur. So if you are in a locale where people are suffering, you have to suffer together with them. Rabbi Yehuda did it by removing his leather shoes. So he was such a great tzaddik. Rabbi is saying himself, but ba'anan kotzav chinan kuli yomer, we can cry out the whole day, the lekra da ashgach ban, and it doesn't appear like God is listening to us. So, Torah scholarship, we have more. God is not listening to us. So you're going to say, well, it must be because of imishum uvdam, right? Because maybe there's something that Rabbah, did that makes me unworthy. Said Rabbah that there's nothing lacking in me. I'ika the chazan midi lame, if someone can come and tell me something improper that I did, come and tell me. Because Rabbah knew that he was a tzaddik. You know why God doesn't listen to us, says Rabbah to the people? Because the people are not the way they should be. The opposite of what we had before of the Ze'ira, right, the Min Chavraya, who quoted the Oishia, Ze'ira Min Chavraya, that it's Me'enei Ha'eda. Rabbah says it's not on me, it's on you. You can be the Gadol Hador, but if the generation is not behaving properly, so there are times that Hashem does not respond to the tefillah of the tzaddik, not because there's any lack in the tzaddik, but only because there's a lack in the generation. Rav Yehuda says the Gemara Vayter, even if they saw two people playing soccer with a loaf of bread, which indicates, first of all, we learned to some brachas that a person should be very careful not to play a game with food. There was a question whether you can use food for something else, whether you can be mishtamish with food. They were treating this food very disrespectful, which is also an indication that there was so plenty, there was so much abundance of food that they, you can afford to use a loaf of bread as a game, as a toy thing. So Omar says that Rav Yehuda Shmamina ikasaba ba'alma, there's such abundance. And because of that, he had a kpeda, Yava Eine and Hava Kafna, and he brought about a famine for people to better appreciate, for the value of food. Now that's not good. There was a famine. So the Rabbanan reached out to Rav Kahana. What was the yichus of Rav Kahana? That he was Shamo'ei. Rav Kahana was the Shamish. He was the Gabbai by Rav Yehuda. And they tell him, listen, you got to get Rav Yehuda to undo that. Mar shchiach kamei, right? You who are mishamish Rav Yehuda, figure out a way. Ne'aseh, force him, get him to leipik bepischa the samach l'shuka. Let him sometimes, sooner than later, come to an area near the marketplace, and he's going to see the famine that's going on. He's going to daven for it to be reversed. And the Gabbai was matzliach. Rav Kahana was successful. And asiyeh, to be ma'asa means to force. That means it wasn't the will of Rav Yehuda, but the Gabbai got him there, and the nafak l'shucha. And Taka, he saw the kenufia. And he says, Oy gewalt, amr luhu mai hai. What's going on over here? So they told Rav Yehuda, now if you remember, how many times did we learn together that dates, right, was very inexpensive in Bavel. So they told him that akuspa the tamri kaima to come as daven. Everyone, the whole city was waiting on a line, hoping that they heard that some dates are being sold, which was the biggest sign of a drought, of a hunger in Bavel. They didn't even have dates. Oh, Amar, so he says, Shma mina, that kafka ba'alma, Shma mina, the Shma he heard, but now he saw it. So now he's going to daven for rain to come. And how did he daven? By simply putting himself, he began to remove his shoes. So he told his attendant, now whether this is Rav Kahana, doesn't say his name, whether he had another attendant, help me remove a shoe. The moment he removed one shoe, imagine God responded, and for us, it began to rain. He wanted to remove his second shoe. Why did he want to remove his second shoe? Because really, there's two things. There was a drought. Now that it's rain, it's no longer drought, but he wanted to restore the plenty the way it used to be. There was so much plenty that kids were already playing with food like a soccer ball. Now that so Elyahu Navi came and he told him, Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Wow, he tells Rav Yehuda what God is saying. That you, Tzaddik Goy said HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mekayim. You took off one shoe, I'm bringing rain. God fell them, Hashem, without the Tefilla of Rav Yehuda, would not have given them any rain. Hashem already gave rain. You're trying now, so to say, to make Hashem do something not beyond. Not only to take away the drought, but to restore the plenty as before. If you're going to remove your second shoe, Hashem says, that much beyond what I wanted to do, I am not willing. And therefore, he did not remove his second shoe. And again, the type of abundance never returned during that story. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Mari B'Radav Shmuel. We already mentioned above, and another time why we don't mention the father. But Rav Mari, the grandson of Shmuel, says, I was standing at the banks of the river, Papa, when that story happened. Rav Yehuda removed one shoe and it already began to rain. And I saw at that time Malachim. When Hashem brought about rain, much more happened. It wasn't only that it began to rain. Hashem sent Malachim. And they appeared, the Ko Idamu La Malachim. If I don't confuse Malachim Metachof, that's Malachim, Malachi Ashares, and Malachim Ametaches, these are sailors. And what happened? The Komaisi Cholom, they were bringing sand, which is a common thing, Umalanula Arbe, and they were loading boats with sand. We had above, why did they load boats with sands? They would put the boats deep into the water to bring up the precious coral. Anyways, they were malachim that looked like sailors. And when Hashem brought about rain, the angels turned the sand into flour. Not stam flour, fine flour, miraculous flour. And these sailors took the flour that was made out of sand, and they went into the port, they went into the city, and they began to sell it. So Amar Lohu, so who Rav Mari saw all that. So he told to the Chedra, to the Yidden, don't buy this flour, because the Maisa Nisimu. And the Maisa Nisimu, look inside the Rashi again, it's still on the right side, 8 lines from the bottom. Don't benefit from Maisa Nisim. The same story from Elazar Ish Birita that we have above with his daughter. But it began to rain. The next day, he had Ruach HaKodesh. He said that, or the Gemara is saying it after the fact, that, or Rav Mari predicted that in Parzina, tomorrow boats will come in here. Because of the rain, there's already going to be more flour, it's going to be cheaper. Wait one more day and don't benefit from Maisa Nisim. Weiter, says the Gemara, Rava Iklala Hagronia and Gozer Tanisa, because in the city of Hagronia there was no rain, and his Rava's Taanis didn't help. Vila Yasa Mitra, Amalahu, Bisu Kula Alma Besani Saichu. So Rava asked the people, it's already say Sakhi Chavim, don't break your fast. Don't break your fast. Go to sleep still in the fast. Now, were they makabel the Taanis prior to? That wasn't the point. Just perhaps, as we learned in Brachas and the whole sugya there of dreams, right? That when a person dreams in the beginning of the night, and we learned of the Marsha, those dreams are of lesser significance, because sometimes dreams are simply the body's reaction towards the food that you ate. That's why the dreams you have towards the early morning are more authentic. Here, they didn't eat. He wanted them to sleep with no food in their stomach, for at least someone to have a dream, a real dream. And the next day, the next morning, the Rava told the people, if anyone had a dream, please share the dream with me. And yes, Lididi, in my dream, Akriyun Bechalmi, a pasuk was read, or the following statement was read. What was the statement? Shalom Tav. Right? Good peace. Lerav Tav. Now, who was the Rav? Whether the Rav was Rabbi Lazar, or whether the Rav here is Rava. Meribain Tav, from the good God. The mituve meitiv la'ame, that from God's goodness, there's going to be goodness to the people. Clear. He heard a nevuah in the dream that it will be good. So Amar Gavaldi. So comes along Rava and he says, Shmami no eis rotzenhi. Very interesting reaction. Not Shmami no, that he heard in the dream that the good God is going to bring goodness, and therefore let's go celebrate. It means that now it's an eis rotzen to ersh daven. So therefore, let's daven again. And this time around, this is amazing. So unlike all the other stories we had in this daf until now, that the fault, so to say, was on the head or on the people. So when the tzaddik became even more humble, that brought about rain. In other words, it was on the tzaddik. It was a greater isarusa de lasata. This story is different. This story is that nothing changed in Rava. Rav is the same. The people are the same. The time is different. The concept of an eis ratzon. The same circumstances, but if you daven at the right time, your tefillah can have a greater effect. Says the Gemara, Ahu Gavram, there was a person, the Ichayev Nagda B'Veitina the Rav. He was Chayiv Malkus. Why was he Chayiv Malkus? That's rabbinic Malkus. Because Mishum the Baal Kutis, because he had a relation with a non-Jewish woman. Came along, that was the standard. Yeah, they chap you, you're going to get Malkus. Nagdei Rava's based and gave him Malkus, but this person unfortunately passed away. Now let's understand, even though the Goyim, the Babylonians and the Persians gave the Jewish community the right to be semi-autonomous, and we had our own Reish Galusa, Altsguten Shein, but they never gave us the right to execute someone. By the way, we also had no such right. If the Sanhedrin is not sitting in the Lishkas HaGazis, then no other Sanhedrin at that time has the right to judge anyone with capital judgments. But here it was an accident, but it came out that someone was taken to the Jewish court and he walked out dead. So the anti-Semites informed the king, who was then Shvoid Malka, that, hey, Rava used too much power that he never gave him. He executed someone in court. That Ishtama Milsa Beishva Malka, Shvoy Malka heard what Rava did in a negative way. Rava executed someone. And therefore, he was planning to do something not good to Rava. So what the miracle was, the way the Baal Shem Tov says, that the greatest miracles we don't even know. What happened is that his mother, the king's mother, Ifra Hurmis, guys, remember in Baba Basra, that whole sugi over there in the Ayans? We learned over there that Hermes is the name of a demon, a bad demon. Ifra means beautiful. So she had a demonic beauty. Anyways, the mother of Shmuel Malka, her name was Ifra Hurmis, Ima de Shmuel Malka. So she told to her son, the monarch, be careful. Don't do anything against the Jewish people. You know why? Because God is close to them. The whole man, the boy, the morayu yoiv. When they daven to God, God gives it to them. No other nation has such a thing. And so the son asked his mother, Amar La, Maihi, where do you see that God listens to the Jewish people? So she answered that whenever they need Rahmanis for rain, the rain comes. Now, by the Indians, that was a big yichus. So states that they know how to bring about rain. So Amar Law, God doesn't listen to the prayers. He knew that Jewish people only pray for rain during the rain season. Shkoyach, we daven Mashu Roch Malagesh Shmini Atzeres, and you know what, it rains. Yeah, because naturally that's the time for rain. Not because God listens to the prayers. That was his cynical comeback to his mother. You know what? Let me find out if God listens to them. Let's go see if they're going to daven during the Tammuz, during the summer season, if rain is going to come. Now, we mentioned already on Amud Aleph, right, when Rabbi Yehuda Nisiyah said, look at the difference between Shmuel Haramasi, right, and Yehuda ben and him. So here's the story. That was the story with Shmuel. Shmuel davened in summer. So Sholchalei Rava during this happened during summer. Now, a very important caveat here. The one that was in trouble, Shvoi Malka, wasn't going to hurt the Jewish community. Shvoi Malka was going to punish Rava, God forbid. So here, Rava's davening for rain in summer is really not, it was for him. Kivin, so Sholchalei Rava, so Ifro Hurmis, the mother told Rava, hey, you better daven for rain, it better work now. If not, you're in trouble. Kevon daitach, Kevon, half kavana. Ubayarachmi, that what? The say mitra for rain to come. Rava understood that there was an ace tzara, and Bayirachmi, Rava davened with all his kavanas, but v'lo yosamit. But when he saw that rain is not coming, Amar Lafanov, so he told to God, and that's the pasuk in Tehillim Mem Dalet, that Elokim be'ozneinu shoymayna. God, we heard with our ears that what? That which our forefathers told us, that Abisenu Siprolanu, that there was a time that's Bimei Shmuel, that Poyel, Poyalta, Bimei, and Bimei Kedem, that in days of old, you did an action, God. What was your action? That you brought rain in the summer. But we didn't yet see it. In other words, can you, Hashem, do to us what you did to our forefathers? And God responded to that. Amazing. So this is not about schus avis. This is about evoking, like Misha Anu Lavisena Bahara, Misha Anu Huyana. Where just like you did a miracle and we believe in it, let us merit to see it. And you know how much it rained? Asa Mitra. So much rain came at the Shafuch Marzave, the Tzipoide, that the gutters in Israel in the north, in Tzipoide, rain falls out of the gutters. It fell from their rain until it came all the way to the Diglas, until it came to the Tigris River. Wow. So Rava brought about a miracle. That saved Rava. Taka Shvoi Malka saw that God listens to Rava. However, Asa Abu Rava's father came to whom? To his son, and this is what Rava's father tells him. Mi Ika the Mitrach Kame Shemaya Kulahai. Like we had just before, right? God tells Elyahu that Rabbi Yehuda is taking off his other shoe. There's a limit. It sounded it doesn't always mean that Hashem is happy with that. So and therefore, Amar Utzleit, Amar Lei Shane Duchtech. Get out of your bed, leave where you're sleeping. Shani Duchtech, he changed his place. And the next morning he saw that on his bed there were marks of knives. Look inside the Rashi. Here's already in the inside of the Amid, 6 lines from the top on Rashi's side. Because of what happened. Because he, so to say, brought about such a change in nature. And what came is that they came and they knifed his bed. Wow. And then Rava's father protected him from that. I know we're late. Oh man. But we'll stop over here. God willing to be continued. Gan Eden.
Thank you.